back to Season 3, Episode 6 of YNCN's podcast, Beyond the Beak. My name's Grace.
I'm Anmol.
And today we are here with the Engineering Dean of the University of Toronto. Dean Yip, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey guys, so glad to be here tonight. Chris Yip, I'm the Dean of the Faculty of Applied Science Engineering here at the University of Toronto. Proud alum of ChemEng here at U of T, so really looking forward to tonight's conversation.
So tell us about the different, you have multiple chemical engineering degrees. Do you want to tell us about that?
Sure. So, my undergrad is from here at the University of Toronto. Proud school alum from a few decades ago, I guess. Maybe you can't tell from the voice, but I'll do a few decades ago. But yeah, my undergrad from ChemEng. But then I actually went to the University of Minnesota for my Ph.D., which was in the Department of Chemical Engineering and Material Science there.
Sounds cold.
Yeah. Sounds cold. Yes, it was. Actually, funny anecdote. My introduction to Minnesota, Grace, you said it was cold. My introduction was they had a massive snowstorm called the Halloween snowstorm of 1991. And I got there, and I thought we had snow in Toronto, but holy cow, 36 plus inches of snow came down over a weekend.
Wow.
And didn't go away. It was there for that. I was like, welcome to grad school in Minnesota with a giant snowstorm.
All right. So you pursued academia instead. Well, you did a bit of industry, but then you decided to go with academia. Do you want to tell us about your choice with that?
So I don't know if it was a choice so much as just taking an opportunity. As you said, I worked between undergrad and grad school. So I spent 3.5 years working full time, which was cool. Went back, actually worked for a faculty member who had come back from industry to be a faculty member. Did an industrial postdoc, but then I was just like at loose ends a little bit, just started looking at opportunities that popped up. And UT had a position a split position between biomedical engineering and ChemEng. So I just kind of applied and things, I don't know, just kind of fell into place, I guess, and this is where I've been for the past few years.
That is, it's awesome. I feel like when you said things just fall into place, and I mean something else fell into place, you've been reappointed recently, so congratulations.
Oh, great. Yeah, thanks.
So, we're glad to have you back, and continuing. So I guess you want to talk a little bit about how you came to the position itself, like the position of being a dean, and how that has maybe fallen into your place.
It falls in my place. I'm not sure if it sort of fell into any. I had no grand plan, that's for sure. No, I think as you just said, again, being reappointed for another 5-year term. It was an opportunity that emerged. I was in a different role at the university before I became dean, and the former dean's term had finished, and there was a search on. I wasn't really contemplating it at all. It was a few people had reached out and suggested I interview. So I had a couple of ideas, kind of go in, maybe do a little bit of the pitch of the ideas to the committee in a sense, and I guess it kind of worked. So it followed that entrepreneurial perspective on things, and but it's been a ton of fun. Lots of stuff has happened, good and bad, I guess, over the past as everybody knows, over the past 5 years. So it's an interesting start to being a dean. I don't think anyone planned on a pandemic to be your first, year as a dean, having to deal with it. But it's been a ton of fun. Love hanging out with the students and chatting. It's been a real joy. I'm really blessed and to be the dean.
Oh yeah, for sure. I feel like one thing that everyone loves about you as the dean is how involved you want to get with the community. I mean, I think as YNCN, we got kind of that exposure when you look at our mascot video.
Yes.
Literally, we were just filming on campus for context, and we see Dean Yip walking by, but he approaches us and we're like, "Hey, how is it going?" And he's like, "What are you guys doing here with this big mascot?" We can tell him, the penguin.
The penguin, yeah.
And then we're just filming this music video, and Dean Yip's like, "Well, I can get involved as well," so. We brought him on, and you saw what you saw in the YouTube video. We'll probably put the link in the description. They can check out that video as well. But I think that really spoke to, you were just on the fly, willing to kind of jump on that video. And I think students really love it.
It's fun. The best, as I've said on multiple occasions, the best part of my day is kind of, I was going to say doing podcasts with students, but it's sort of doing stuff with students and chatting and hearing and spending time. And talking to faculty and staff as well. I mean, it's all about the community that is engineering and the broader community that is U of T and so on. And it's just, it is a ton of fun. Reaching out, having the random chats, walking down the hall, walking between buildings and stuff, and seeing students kind of hanging out, seeing what they're doing. If I do on a trip and you run into PEY students, run into alums, it's just fascinating to hear what people are doing, to see stuff that you're doing that's not even like curricular, right? To me, that's the most fun, is to hear like YNCN getting created, right? That kind of stuff. The design teams, like, sure, I want to know how well you did in your calc midterm, kind of, but it's all the other stuff which is far more interesting. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, I think you come in first year to tell the students like, hey, there's this thing called Coffee with Chris, and you mentioned it, and I think as a first year you're like, oh, the dean's trying to get involved, but only like later you find out that he actually wants to have this coffee. Like, it's an actual thing. It's possible. You'll take a selfie. It'll go on your Instagram.
Yeah.
Like it's an actual thing.
Yeah. It's great. I did it as a bit of a lark in the first when I just started as dean. And it was have a coffee with every single undergrad before they graduate. People are like, that's 6,000 coffees over the course. And I'm like, well, it's a lot of coffee. But it's been a ton of fun. And it's just been great to just, like I said, have that casual one-on-one conversation. Not scripted, not a town hall. Sometimes it's a bit of an event session from the students, which is great, right? You hear what's not working and what we could do better. Other times it's just, I'm really interested in this. And I think people have heard me say this before. A lot of the cool things that have happened that we've come up with have all been because students have said, you know what? It'd be great if we could do this. And I go, well, I kind of just heard that from like 2 or 3 other students in different years and different programs. Let's do it. Let's figure out a way to bring in a new minor. Let's figure out a way to support a design team. Let's figure out a way to do this, right? And it's all about enabling you to do different things, right? It makes everybody successful.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you've had a really fun time as dean, but I'm curious, what are some of the not so fun parts of being dean? I mean, engineering is a tough degree, right?
Yeah.
So all these engineering students at U of T are definitely experiencing struggle at some point,
Sure.
and everyone will in their career. So can you tell us about a time that you struggled?
Oh, as a student,
Or maybe not as a time, just like
both.
Both. All is good.
No. I think this is a really good point because I think you're right. We think about mental health. We think about stressors. Stress is good and stress is bad, right? Stress always makes you stronger. Too much stress is a bad thing to do as well, and it's all about how you manage these things. When I was an undergrad, this is one of the things which is neat. I went through the same stuff that you guys or you folks are going through as well as an undergrad. I came in from high school. You're like, I know all this stuff, and I'm like, oh, I don't know all this stuff. I went through the agony of first year calc. My transcript, you could probably pull it and see what I did in first year calc. So I've been through all of that, and I've seen the challenges, and we've also seen how things have changed. Like when I went through in the mid '80s, we didn't have minors. We had very scripted courses. No one did PEY. All this sort of stuff, or very few people did PEY. And you look at how the program's changed now, right? And it's different. It's significantly different. So it's sort of, there are different levels of stressors now that are showing up, and it's all about how you manage those sorts of things. As an undergrad, sure, I went through exactly the same things. I need to find a job. I got way too much homework to do, right? This problem set's awful. I don't understand how to do this, right? Very classic things. I think now as dean, I see those same things coming from students. I see additional pressures from students because they've got many more things on their plates, right? We start to see things where geopolitics become stressors for students, right? They've got family in different parts of the world. They're worried about that. How do we help them manage that? The transition in, the transition out. We see stressors that show up because of PY, right? The pandemic obviously meant that's a massive stressor on everybody in the host system. And so how do we help navigate the system through that? and then dealing with students emailing, it's like, well, I'm stuck in this country. How am I supposed to do my problem sets? How do I work this out? And then on the other hand, we're like, well, we have to do this. So it's these sorts of things. And these days now, we've got financial pressures as well. So I'm a glass half full type of person. So to me, every day, I'm always relatively optimistic about things, that they always will work out. We'll always be able to find a solution. Nothing is ever kind of a fatal flaw to anything. There's always ways to solve problems, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what engineering is about, is creative solutions to things.
Oh, that's a great answer. Be positive.
Yeah, I think
even if you're doing bad, it's okay.
Well, in the moment, it's always a challenge, right?
Yeah.
But when you look back on it, you're just like, maybe that wasn't as bad as I thought it was when I looked in retrospect, right? But it's about getting through that little bump. It's I get that at that point in time, it's like a massive thing. You sort of have to work your way through it, meet with friends, do something different, like not think about it. I think that's the key, right? Don't obsess about the problem. Do something else, transition to something else, come back to it, right?
Yeah. Also, I wanted to shift the topic of tension to PEYs, because you've spoken pretty openly about encouraging international PEYs.
Yep.
Do you want to talk about some of the motivations behind that?
Sure. I mean, I think, so PY in general, I think is great. As I said earlier, when I went through undergrad, 10-15% of people do PY. Now we're closer to like basically 99%
Yeah.
of first years are registered in it, right? Which I think is
Sure.
awesome, right? So effectively we're a 5-year program now, right?
Yeah.
Everybody gets one. And I think it's awesome. I think the international part, and it's part of my broader scheme around international opportunities for undergrads, which is that I want, along with coffee, I wanted every undergrad to do something international before they graduate. And I think a key part of that is the PY, international work opportunities. If you ignore sort of bureaucratic stuff that gets in the way, you sort of think about what is it like to work in a different country, in a different culture, different challenges, different problems, like problems that you can solve in Toronto using one approach may not work if you are suddenly in Cape Town or you're suddenly in Singapore. And it's learning how to pivot and recognize those sort of cultural differences or economic differences or governmental bureaucracy or whatever. It's understanding that, because you're going to graduate and inevitably work in an international sphere. So being able to be conversant and bounce and flex as you go, I think is a huge kind of a non-tangible that comes out of taking on an international experience. I think this is maybe a third thing I want people to do. Dropping them into a country where you don't know the language and have to pick up the language, right? And be able to work with your team in different languages, I think is another huge benefit about going international. Something I regret not doing as an undergrad, that I didn't do a lot of even as a faculty member until maybe the last decade, where I've done a lot of traveling. And I think it gives you such a better perspective on things.
I really like that mentality, actually. One thing you may not know, I'm actually from Boston, so technically I'm an international student.
Technically international
Okay,
student.
the thing is, like, I wanted to come to Canada because I wanted to experience, like, the international experience, but now that I'm actually here, I'm realizing that it's really not so different. I mean, yeah, maybe we go to Tim Hortons instead of Dunkin' Donuts, but
that's a win. Yeah.
Although Dunkin' Donuts is better. I said what I said. No, Tim Hortons cannot compete. But the point is, I wanted to come to Canada to get a broader perspective. Sure. And now that I'm here, I can see that it's culturally very similar. So that's why I think doing like an international experience would be really good for me, even though technically it's already an international experience. But is it really?
And this is what I can see that, because we get a lot of students go, I want to go international, I'm going to go to San Francisco for people. And I'm just like, okay, West Coast, you got an ocean versus beach. Toronto, a beach versus Toronto, and you got like Ontario. The U.S. is a different cultural experience. I mean, it is, frankly. If you go to different parts of the U.S., it's very different. Boston versus Toronto, probably not as much. Same with me going to Minnesota. It's like, it's not very different than being in Toronto, accent aside, right? But I mean, there are definitely cultural differences between Canadians and Americans. You know, especially if you say you went to Quebec or something like that, you would definitely notice it. But even though you're American who is here or from Boston that's here, I would certainly encourage taking an internship or work term in Europe or something like that, just
Definitely.
to sort of see.
I really hope I can do that, because I think it's all about broadening your perspective, I guess. So not living in kind of like a bubble and experiencing different cultures, and I think and the mentalities about things like work are very different.
Oh yeah,
And I think
there's a huge difference.
It's good.
Yeah, and what's like normalized as well, right?
Yeah.
You also mentioned like that language point, and I think it's funny because anyone who's like done like school in COVID, especially at the first years and second years, when we had like those ESP courses, and you had to like work in teams for the first time with people. I think there was like one assignment which was like, what did you have to work through as a team? That was a challenge, and I think like maybe 99% of them, the challenge was like, oh, we had multilingual people and we had a hard time connecting like time zones, languages. It was hard to like discuss everything because you couldn't have body language, right? You couldn't like be in the same room and discuss things. And I think like that COVID taught us that, like how to try and overcome it. So I think the next step being like, okay, now you have the opportunity. I think post-COVID era, you really value that in-person experience to like be in a location and monitor people's body languages and like a lot of other things at the workplace.
Oh, 100%. I think that there are actually two wins to what you just said. One of them is definitely the value of in person, and I despite I'm sure there's people who say I love online learning and stuff. I think there's a huge value to the in person engagement with lecture, with your classmates and all that kind of stuff. There's a massive win there. Like you said, body language. You can't get from a Zoom call. You have no idea where someone's, like, their cameras are pointed wherever, and you don't know where their eyeballs are, and you like they're playing on their phone. Who knows what they're doing, right? And but I think another point that you raised, which was really cool, was that experience of a team trying to collaborate cross time zones, cross language, cross cultural. That's what happens now in a multinational company when you're working on projects that are abroad, right? Is that you are stuck in that situation of like, wow, this person is 12 hours in a phase. We have to converse. We have to get this project done. We are going to meet in person at some point to go over the project. But we do have to do that. And we do need to figure out linguistic challenges. Someone uses this word. It's like, what did you actually mean when you said it? Well, isn't that what you meant? It's like, not quite, right? And picking up on those cultural nuances, I think there's a massive value you can pick up on that, right? North American culture is different than Asian culture, right? Different,
very much so.
Very different, right? And so how do, what you do all of a sudden may not resonate well if you don't understand the cultural differences, right? I think, I was going to say, the other thing, online stuff is great, but it works best if you've met in person before and then you continue it as an online. I think it's really hard if you start online with somebody and then try to build an in-person rapport out of it, especially if it's just like texting back and forth, right? I found that it works really if I've met someone in person at a meeting remotely, and then you can or not remotely, in person at a conference or something, that you can continue the conversation and build a relationship even though you don't physically see them a lot. I found that actually works really well.
Yeah, and like it almost like doesn't feel real. And the thing is like where I'm doing my PY right now, and I think a lot of North American companies, you have the concept of like offshore resources, which essentially refers to someone from Asia working with you. Yeah. We were lucky that we had an opportunity that some of them like got flown in at one point, and we had a chance to meet them, and like, the difference it makes, and it kind of like reminded me of being in second year. Because I was in 2020 when I joined, so when we came in person, everyone's like, in the lecture hall, it's like, oh my God, you're that character. You always put this in Discord, or you put this on the chats, and it's like, oh my God, we're all actually real people here. Yeah.
It was huge. I think it was such a disconnect. Like if you spent that first year, as you did like online, that's kind of why we had that sort of. We came back and had an orientation, almost like two orientations, right? A first year orientation plus a reorientation for second years. Who hadn't been in person, because we had to yes, you went to class, but your classroom at that point in time was basically clicking a different link in Zoom, now you actually have to see where the building is and go to the room and understand all that kind of stuff, right? Like that's a huge culture shock, especially if you're coming into second year, right? You're like, wait a sec. So, yeah.
Oh my god, like I remember being called a frosh leader and I was like, no, I'm a frosh. Like, there's no leader for here.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, I'm gonna try to make this work.
We're
I don't know where this building is.
Yeah.
We're running into Nathan Phillips. Oh my god, I'm not looking at the picture anymore. There's water. Oh, this is nice.
Yeah, I it's funny because it was 3 years ago, right? And like it's amazing how fast you've kind of forgot, right, that it happened, and we're starting to kind of wash out the folks who actually kind of happened to come through that, because people sort of graduate, their fourth years, all sorts of stuff, and you sort of, it's kind of become a really distant memory about what it was, right? And you don't want to go back to
Oh
that,
no, definitely not.
right?
My experience was a little different because I was in high school still when
Yeah.
COVID hit, but I think that still made a really big impact on us
Mhm.
because COVID hit during grade 11 for us, so we lost half of grade 11 grade 10, pardon me.
Oh,
And then
Yeah.
pretty much all of grade 11 was online, and then grade 12 was like kind of hybrid,
and
but
you're here.
because like grade 11 was all online, everything was reshuffled.
Yeah.
So it was just, it was not as organized as it. So when we come into first year, like it was a challenge because we weren't used to that kind of, like that kind of academic setting.
Yeah, you've
Everything
kind of
was
forgotten
online,
it,
and
right?
we didn't
Yeah.
have. This might have been my high school in particular, but we didn't really have midterms and finals anymore, especially after COVID hit.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
those first few midterms were a culture shock.
Oh, yeah. I actually wanted to ask something here, and this may speak to more like maybe like leadership style.
Sure.
Because we're speaking about a topic being like COVID, and I'm sure when it actually happened, everyone's like scattered, like what are we gonna do? How are we gonna handle this? And I'm sure all eyes were like looking at you, being the point person at UC
Sure.
Engineering. So like, how do you kind of like as a leader like go about solving that as a problem? Like, how do you go into that meeting room? There's the news outside. You have to close the university. Like, what's your first next step? Like, how do you actually go about this big problem?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll just let you know what happened, right? Basically, I mean, it was a call on a Friday, basically saying, there's this thing coming in, we're gonna have to shut, right? And you were like, so they basically have a call at the university to all the deans to say this is what's gonna happen, and okay, this is what we're gonna do, and you literally there's a chain of command or whatever,
Yep.
but you've got an advisory group of your vice deans.
Mhm.
And you immediately call them all in, and you call the vice deans, you call your chairs, and say, okay, here's what's going to happen. We're pivoting entirely. The university already had kind of an emergency. They've got lots of plans. They had a plan for sort of an emergency situation like this.
Okay.
Here's the pivot. Let everybody know, and this is what we're going to do as of Monday, right? Over the weekend. So 48 hours later, everybody switches to online, right? It was just basically, here are all the Zoom rooms, everybody call everybody, right? It wasn't like there was you knew something was coming, right? Because you could see it happening, and it's migrating east.
Yeah.
This is coming. So people sort of knew what was going to happen. And the question was more about, we can make the emergency switch. We can deliver courses. We were close to exams, so it was kind of like, it was actually not bad. It wasn't like the beginning of term. So you're like, oh, we only got 2 weeks left of class. We're just going to pivot and deal with exams, and maybe we'll be back in time. The bigger question was more about, okay, what are we doing about September, right? Because that's really where you start to have to figure out our students going to come in. So it was really a lot of, no one knew the answers.
Yeah.
So there were basically like daily and weekly calls with basically a council of colleagues. So we had this sort of TGIT, thank God it's Thursday calls of all the chairs and all the vice deans. We all just got on a Teams or Zoom call, and we just said, okay, how's it going? Here's what we're hearing. What are you doing in your portfolios? What's the next step, right? And it was all by consensus, right? And just basically working the problem, knowing that no one really knew, right?
And it's one of those things where like it's like sort of easing away, right? Like it started to go away. Everyone's like, okay, this is getting better. Next year people come in, and then second year for me, it's like 2021 fall.
Yeah,
We had
just
to like
exams.
just for like,
Yeah.
during exams. I think it was like
Yeah,
okay,
we almost made it out.
yeah, we did.
We were 2 days
Last
away.
week.
We were 2 days away from making it out, right? It was
Yeah.
like, I remember the call, the Monday, we're on a call.
Yeah.
And we're like, we got this. We're good. Like, we're going to make it till the Friday,
Yeah.
last day of exams. We're going to make it out. Something's coming west. Because Queens has got hit, right? It's
Yeah, yeah,
coming
yeah.
over. No, we're good. Wednesday, now we're done. Like, we're locking the whole thing down. Nobody can come in-person exams. Nothing. It's like completely shut it, right?
Yeah.
So that was annoying, right? That was
Yeah.
really tough because we had to figure out the grading process, right?
Oh, yeah.
And that caused no end of dilemmas for people across the university because it was just really difficult. I think looking back, what it really taught us is that one, the university can react quickly to things. Two, it also pointed out like there are some flaws in processes that we have because you never anticipate things. And it's like, oh, this messed up because this course forgot to do something, right? Or we forgot to do this. Oh, actually, we hadn't thought about that, so now we're in a problem of not having enough grades or whatever. So it taught us a lot, right? So like I said, you always learn from these sorts of experiences
Definitely.
that we don't want to go through again.
Yeah. I want to pivot a little bit, and you're a semi-professional runner.
Semi-professional.
Or no, I like professional. Would you consider yourself a professional runner?
I don't get paid to run. I pay to run. Maybe that's a better way to frame
You
it.
do pay to run, yes.
But you've run in some of the biggest marathons in the world.
Yeah. I have, yes. Yeah.
Which ones are your favorite?
Let's not forget where she's from.
Yeah, you
I've
you
done-
know what to
okay,
say.
yeah, okay, so Boston is great. I've done Boston 6 times.
Wow.
So I know that course really well. It's a fun event.
Heartbreak Hill.
Heartbreak Hills, yes. It's a good course. Like, it's a fun course to do. It's kind of the iconic marathon to run,
Yeah.
for sure. I'd always been trying for years to qualify, and then actually qualified, and then I made this vow that if I ever, anytime I qualify, I will run it, versus sort of, I did a BQ, and then I'm just like, whatever. And
Yeah.
just like, no, I gotta do it. So like Boston, I've done Boston, like I said, 6 times. I've done New York 3 or 4 times. Tokyo is fun. Destination events are always cool. I've done Berlin twice now. So yeah.
Also, for context for our listeners, Heartbreak Hill is mile 25 of mile 26 of the Boston Marathon.
Okay.
And that is, I think that's where like most runners drop out.
Wait,
and it's,
what?
No, because it's called Heartbreak Hill. Because it's
Near
mile
the end.
25. You're so close. And then it's this
Oh.
massive hill that's
It's
like a
not-
mile long.
But it's not really, yeah, it's bad because it's towards the end. And so Boston is actually, it's not a world record eligible course, right? Because it's
Mhm.
net,
It's too hilly.
no, it's net downhill.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's not eligible for, because it's a net downhill course. But the problem is the beginning of the
Oh, I
course
see.
is downhill. So people go like crazy at the start because it's downhill. So everybody goes, oh, this is easy. And then they're like, wait a sec.
And then they don't pace themselves.
Don't pace themselves.
Okay.
And then you end up having to run up the Newton Hills and then in. And the Sitco sign, which is a good marker for where you are, seems like a long way when you just start to see it. And also, you come up onto the finishing straight, so you can see the finish line. So this is left-hand turn,
Okay.
and then you can see it. And you're like, who put that finish line so far away? Because it's like 750 meters to run, which doesn't sound like a lot. Until
Until you've already
25
run
miles.
20
until you've run like the 41 kilometers, then you've got another 750, and it just seems like a long way away, but it's always a lot of fun.
And just to bring it back a little bit, you said you pay to run. Your Instagram's not monetized yet?
I wish. I
What?
need to figure that out. I need to figure that part out. But no, it's cool.
Yeah, one reason why I like to bring up running a lot is because it's a test of endurance, and I feel like a lot of the times engineering is kind of a test of endurance,
It's a test of resilience
Yeah.
and stuff like that, right? And I've said this before. It's sort of, stubbornness is maybe the wrong term for sometimes like this, but it's a.
I think like grit is a good
Grit
word.
is a good, grit's a good word, right? I've never not finished a marathon, never pulled out of an event, even if I've run quad Z injured, but which is not smart. But yeah, I mean, I think so. I've used marathons as an analogy for engineering, right?
Yeah.
People say a marathon is basically four 10Ks back to back to back. Engineering's a 4-year program. Treat it like that, right? Like it's 4 individual segments. You can't sprint a marathon because you'll definitely not be really happy, right? Yeah. So it's a long. You're in for the long game, right?
Yeah.
Like 4 or 5 years of undergrad or any undergrad program, actually, to be fair. And it's about thinking of it in that frame of mind, not sprinting out of the gate, because that's work.
And I mean, I think it's like a U of T engineer. It's like, sure, you get the brand, you get the skills, you learn. But I think one thing it gets you, and I think now that I'm doing PAY and I speak to my friends, I hear like other people who are applying for jobs. I think U of T engineer like has like this quality of someone who can work hard, dedicate themselves, like as a given. Mm-hmm. Like employers aren't worried like, okay, they're hiring a U of T engineer, can they work hard or can they dedicate themselves to something? Right. Like it's like a given.
Yeah, I think we try to teach. I use the word grit, right? We try to. I don't know if you have to teach grit as much as teaching people that they can work through it, being resilient, being able to deal with perturbations in the system, right? I mean, there's never a defined path to the answer, even in a problem set, right? You can come at it from different angles. Mm-hmm. And it's always about figuring out what those different angles are. If this one approach doesn't work, can I pivot and try another approach? Can I do this? Can I phone a friend or whatever, right? I mean, there's always ways to solve a problem from different angles. And it's learning how to do that and not getting mired in a particular path as the only way to do it, right? The only way to achieve your goals is go down this way. You can get to it from multiple directions.
Yeah, for sure. I guess moving from this running concept, one thing which you as a dean have always had is like, if you're traveling a lot, you're speaking to a lot of people, mm-hmm. you remember everything. No, genuinely, I've noticed, and I think Grace noticed, like people have noticed, your memory is extremely sharp.
Okay.
You remember, like, genuine question, like, is there something you do to like better your memory? Has it always come naturally to you?
Thank you for saying that. I was going to say I'm getting older. I'm starting to have senior moments. I don't know. I think what it is because this sort of active listening, right? Sort of listening to what people are telling you and remembering context. So, the coffee with Chris. I don't remember all, we're probably close to 1,000 people I've had coffee with. Don't remember all of the individual names, but you remember stories, right? You remember something that they said, and then you go, wait a sec. So-and-so just said this, and I just remember that we dug this up. And then so I'll ping them back with a note and say this, right? I just had a coffee with a third-year inside, right? And turns out they're a Mass Stats Finance person, but they're really interested in F1, right? Formula One racing, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, that's cool. He's, they're part of Toronto, Toronto, whatever. Toronto. There are a few ways of pronouncing it, right?
Yeah.
But then I was like, you know what? I remember that UTFR for racing said that there's a lot of people that are in F1. So I pinged Daniel and said, hey, give me a list of all the students who've gone, alumni who are now in F1. So I got this list and I sent it to the students. Said, hey, check it out. Here's a list. And then I said, you know what? I remember that Professor Trescas in UTEV, electric vehicle, when we were driving around in the Porsche Taycan, which we were lent,
wow.
so that they could do some studies on it. He said that Professor Weitong in ECE races Porsches in his spare time. So I emailed him, can you confirm that? And he goes, yeah. And he also loves F1. And then I said, actually, Doug, Professor Perovic in material science is also a huge F1 fan and knows Helio Castroneves, who raced for Hitachi in the Indy series. And there's a picture from 2015 of Helio Castroneves, the race car driver, in the Pratt building, driving the scanning electron microscope made by Hitachi, hence the tie to the sponsor, him actually driving it and etching something. So I connected all these dots together, right? Brought them all back from different places. I heard this information and looped them in. So now I'm actually really keen on actually doing like a podcast or video or something tied to Formula One racing and engineering, and how are we connected. Actually, today I just sent a note. This is off topic. I sent a note to Professor Trescas because I saw a tweet from Formula One racing, because there's Formula E now, right?
Yeah.
And they were showing how they're now allowing pit stops. So how do you pit stop a Formula E? Because you can pit stop and fuel with ethanol really fast, like dump a can, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're talking about
charge.
so they're,
Yeah.
charge. They're mandating like a minimum pit stop, but how do you charge? And then you think, okay, that's cool. They're going to do it really fast charging, 600 kilo, whatever, something really fast. But then you think that technology needs to roll down to cars, right? Because that's what's going to happen is EV charging really fast, right?
Yeah.
But what are the challenges? F1's going to do this first. So I sent that to Professor Trescas and said, check this out. He goes, yes. And we are working on ultra fast charging now.
Oh, wow.
Right, for passenger vehicles. But I said, here's a case of them doing it in Formula One. I wonder what kind of engineering's in place. How can we get involved, right?
I mean, there's also like, I don't know if it's in Belgium or Germany, but somewhere where they rolled out the road, where like it's
Oh, where,
fast
yeah,
charge on
the inductive charging down the road. Yeah. So as the electric vehicles drive,
Yeah.
there's magnetic charging to build charge in the buses or whatever as they're going down the road. Yeah, you build it into the roadway.
Yeah.
It's
I wonder if they'll build it into the pit lane, like charge while going to the lane.
It's only you don't walk over. You got like a pacemaker, don't walk over. You supercharge your phone, or it's like gonna give someone to me like that. It's gonna be like in Iron Man 3 or whatever, where he's wandering doing the whips and stuff like that. But yeah, I think it's interesting to think about, like, how these technologies are appearing in different fields, but they roll down the engineering that's involved, and then the fact that we probably have students, alums, who are in Formula E racing now, who could be doing that kind of stuff, right? All based on the foundation, right?
For sure. I mean, speaking of alums, like I'm guessing you have like your alums, like your class, probably like all over the world, and you have like meetups here and there. I think you see it on IG.
Yeah.
Is there like a favorite spot you like to go together? Like, is there like a spot in Toronto that you could go to, like reminisce? Being
alums, yeah. We've reconnected with alums since I became dean. A lot of alums have sort of kind of come back and stuff, and they're all over the world, and it's just been fun to meet up with them and sort of talk about, hey, Wahlberg, what's it like, or how courses change, or the pit is still the pit, or places like that still look the same. Everybody's got that frame of reference that is from the year you graduated, and I'm able to say, actually, no, it's kind of changed a little bit, right? But it's great to reconnect with people who you may not have actually seen for the past 30 odd years, because their careers taking you different directions, right? So now it's terrific to be able to do that as dean. And I'm not asking them for money. I'm there actually honestly talking to them about how engineering is, like what it's like now, because they're always super curious, right? Because your frame of reference really is the day you graduated. You assume everything's kind of frozen at that point. And it's always fascinating to come back and sort of say, yeah, we changed that, or we now have these minors, or this did this. This is like, wow, I wish we had that. I would love to come back and do another degree, right? It's like, well, we can make that happen.
You're so innovative and passionate about U of T engineering, but I want to know, like, what makes this program so special? What makes you so excited every day to wake up and figure out new ways to improve just engineering? What's the most special thing about it?
To me, I think the most special thing about the program are the people in the program, right? It's the community, and I've said this before, it really is the community, because the community drives the innovation, right? Students give ideas for courses and programs and initiatives, right? They come up with ideas for design teams, they come up with that kind of stuff. Staff come up with ideas about, could we do this, because this would change the way that we deliver courses. This would be a great new program for things. We look at the evolution, frankly, of PEY over the past 5 years, right? It's completely changed from what it was 10 years ago. And I think in a way that's just massively better, right? But that all came with the sort of staff talking with students saying, well, this kind of doesn't work well. What can we do better? And faculty or staff and faculty going, yeah, we can do this. And then talking to faculty who we bring in 14, 15 new faculty a year. and they come in with new ideas, right? They're freshly minted PhDs. Sometimes we bring in senior faculty from other universities. They come in with fresh thoughts, right? About, oh, we can do this, we can try this, let's try this. That I think is really what is special about this place, is that we can enable that kind of conversation. And then hearing from alums, what if, right? We're doing this, we'd love to bring in PY students. We'd love to partner with the university on this particular project because we know the expertise is there. Or what are you doing in this space? Oh, cool, let's partner. So it's really about that, it's the people.
I mean, I think a raw testament to the U of T engineering community is when you're a first year, or when you're applying to U of T, right? If you're in any other program at U of T, I think you have to select to be in a college.
Mm-hmm.
As an engineer, you don't really select to be in a college, and you're wondering, like, why am I not selecting, right? Like, am I missing out? Only to realize that you don't need, like, your school community in itself is like its own thing.
Yeah.
Right? And that's absolutely amazing. Like, you don't need to be in a college or have like that connection. The fact that you're in engineering in your cohort, that's the whole thing for you. You have your own like traditions, a culture associated to being a U of T engineer, which I think is absolutely beautiful.
It is. Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, and I think what's cool, the community is everybody can find their community in engineering, right? There's the folks who focus on courses and they're really interested in a particular research topic and they delve deep into that. They're the students who are like, I'm here because of design teams, or I'm here because I can do a minor in a different area. I'm here because of the music program. And you can find that, right? And I think it's even beyond engineering, right? Because we have so many students who come into engineering, but their passion lies outside of engineering, and they can find that community within the U of T community or within Toronto. And so it's all about enabling that. And I think the other thing is engineering, it's not insular, right? It's a very open, welcoming community. So you have people on design teams who are coming from other faculties, and it's not like, oh, you're not an engineer, you can't be part of this. It's actually, no, we're like, this is part of what we want to do is bring you into these communities. So I think that's really what's important about what engineering is. Not exclusive, it's super inclusive.
Definitely. And I feel like U of T engineers, the connection between all of us, I think all of us want to help each other. There's a spirit of collaboration in engineering, which I don't think you see necessarily in a lot of, I don't know how to explain, but...
Be careful.
No, I don't want to diss anyone.
We can all relate to each other's struggles.
Yeah.
And, empathy's there.
Empathy's there. I think we're all there to see everybody collectively succeed, right?
Yeah,
and I think that's really it is. I mean, you talked about Discord earlier, right? And, especially during the pandemic, right? People are there to help everybody else out. Like, that any student can reach out to another student for help, right? You can reach out to the staff, you can reach out to the faculty, you can reach out to the dean. There's always someone there who's going to be able to help you, right? And I think that's an important message, that we're not there to out-compete or it's not cutthroat. You're not trying to beat somebody all the time. Yes, there's grades and marks matter for some folks, but the reality is that being here is not about the marks. It's not about that. It's about building a core foundation. I have 100% perspective that everybody's going to be successful coming through engineering. It's really what you define as success. For some people it's marks, for other people it's actually much broader than that. And I think it's important that it is actually broader than just getting the grade, because you always get someone who's like, must get this grade. It's like, actually, grand scheme of life, maybe not that important that you get that particular grade. It's more important you understand the material and can apply it. And that's why we're all here to help you get to that point.
And that goes back to kind of the marathon example. Like, even though you can see university as a marathon, but you can also see life as a marathon, where university is just one of the stepping stones.
Yeah, you're going to finish, right?
Yeah.
This is the thing. Like, so when I run marathons, there's people go, there's the, what's your A goal, your B goal, your C goal, whatever, right? And in the event, that goal is going to shift. Because marathon, like you were saying earlier, marathon is 26 miles, right? It's 42 kilometers of running. Like, that's 3, 4, could be 5 hours, right? You don't actually know, even if you prepped, what the day is going to be like until you cross the start line and your watch starts. And then you go, good, this feels like an A goal day, or, oh boy, this is going to be a day where the only thing I'm concerned about is finishing upright, like finishing, and you finish and you go, okay, got that done. This was a learning experience. I didn't train right. I didn't feel right. Something hurt. Whatever. Right. I didn't sleep well the night before. Whatever. It's a learning experience, but you didn't hit your A goal. Whatever. Right.
Yeah.
And my C goal is like finish. Right. And I think that's kind of important.
And in the marathon of your life, what moment are you most proud of?
Oh, I mean, I think that's kind of a loaded question. I mean,
Well, what's a moment that you're proud of?
There's lots of things. I mean, I think to be honest, one of the things that I feel most proud about, to be honest, would be sitting on the stage at Convocation and seeing everybody coming across the stage, right? Students I've seen, some that I've known for like 4 or 5 years now, right? And I know them from not just their grade, I know them from a whole bunch of different contexts. And to see that, sometimes to meet the parents, see that kind of like celebration, I think that's a massive, for me, that's like a massive moment, right? For me, I think things which make me happy are seeing when other people succeed, right? And success is defined by what you define as success, not necessarily what I define as success. What you yourself say, I did this, I'm happy because I did this, then I'm happy for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough. Yeah. I mean, I think like you spoke to your memory earlier, and I think like maybe in your career so far, I'm sure there's like big milestones that people on the external side might look at and say like, oh, you were here when School 150 happened, or you were here when like COVID happened.
Oh yeah, there you go.
But
didn't fall apart. Yeah.
Yeah, but are there like maybe like some memorable moments which only you would know of that maybe want to like share with the students that aren't reflective of School 150 or COVID?
Oh, I mean, I think in individual research programs, like in my own research group, like I'm super happy when I see that aha moment from my grad students or my undergrads when you give them a project and they take the project and you see how they have taken your initial idea and they've made it their own, put their own stamp on it and rolled off, and you've seen how you've enabled them to be successful. And I think that's, to me, is really important. I'm not as concerned about them getting a result, which is something that I said you need to get, versus I'm like, if they didn't do that, like, it's fine. What did you do? What did you come away? What did you pivot to? What did you do? That, I think, is, to me, is key.
And as one of our last questions, do you have any advice for U of T students to be successful so that you can see that success and feel happy?
I think, for all U of T students to feel successful, right? I think it's to sort of, manage your expectations, right? Challenge yourself, right? And I think the other is to take opportunities when they show up, right? Don't be afraid of taking the detour, right? Because detours often lead into cool things. When I go for a run, don't always stay on the same path, right? Take a different, like, go this way. Oh, don't go that way now. Just like learn something and then pivot back, right? And I think that's kind of the important message for students. When you come into U of T, people have a goal, right? Get my engineering degree, you're going to do this. But along the way, you've got 4 or 5 years of stuff, of perturbations, right? You went a different route to class and you saw a seminar, and that seminar, that room inspired you to go in a different direction. You're standing in line for coffee and you heard someone say something behind you about something, like, wait, what's that? And then you went to that and you're just like, that's cool. And that was that perturbation that set you off on your trajectory. And I think that's kind of what you need to look for and take advantage of to be successful.
Definitely.
I think your genuine want to see other people happy is much appreciated by the students.
Yeah.
It really is.
Sure. Yeah. No. Thanks for that. This has been a fun conversation.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
we're also genuinely appreciative of you coming out here with us today. Yeah, it's been fantastic having you on the pod.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So much fun.